Okay guys, so tonight's video is Night Concept 5 and we're going to be talking about conflict. So at the end of tonight's homework you'll know more about the 4 different types of conflict and be able to give a definition as well as identify the pieces from the novel. So there are, first of all, 2 types of conflict, and the very definition of a conflict is the problem or struggle we're seeing within the story. The 2 biggest types or overreaching concepts or topics for conflict are internal versus external. So internal conflict is where the character is having some sort of struggle within himself or herself. So this would be like with them trying to make a decision, whether to believe or not to believe in something, and we often refer to this as character versus self. As external, this is any kind of problem that the character is facing outside of themselves. So this could be having a problem with another character. It could be having a problem with a group or society. It could be having an issue or conflict with machines or animals or even nature itself. And these are subtopics that we usually refer to as character versus character, character versus society, or character versus nature. I know when we were doing our test practice prep, the Jeopardy game and stuff, there's only a couple of different classes that actually were able to list the 4 subgroups of conflict, which again, character versus self, character versus character, character versus society, and character versus nature. These are all things that were on your LA vocab packet that I handed out at the beginning of the year. So again, if we're thinking of a kind of like a tiered strategy of thinking about conflict, we've got internal and external conflict, but then beneath that, we've got these kind of 4 subgroups that we need to be able to identify and understand. So looking at, closer at internal conflict. So again, this is the struggle that occurs within the character's own mind, where they might have trouble making a decision, dealing with kind of mixed feelings or emotion, just again, that kind of internal struggle. So this is generally posed as this conflict that's ethical or emotional in question. And clues to finding that internal conflict within the text would be like the character's hesitation or asking a question of themselves like, what am I doing that's wrong? Or how am I morally wrong? Or, you know, any of those kind of internal struggles that we as humans and individuals have, that by giving it to a character within a story creates a more lifelike, realistic person that we as the reader can connect to. So most novels incorporate some degree of internal conflict in one character or another. It just some obviously go way more in depth depending on the content of the story. And I think, you know, with the content of Night, obviously there are a lot of external factors happening. But as I've been telling you all along, as we're thinking about Ellie and his faith and the person that he was prior to the Nazi occupation and you know, being sent into the camps, that Ellie that we see, that young boy that is just so involved in his religious studies, what is his internal conflict? I'm kind of giving you the answer here, but what is his internal conflict as he goes through this process of being in the camps? So that's kind of the internal conflict that you should be seeing as we're reading this novel. It's really not something that you can see. It's not a tangible thing. It's not necessarily something you can always point out in the text. It's again going to be a little bit more of an implicit meaning as you see the character battle within itself and change. So what kind of, again, I kind of already answered this question for you, but what kind of internal conflict might Ellie be working on as we see his transformation from the beginning of the novel to the end of the novel? Okay, closer look at external conflict. So again, that's the struggle that occurs between a character and some sort of outside force, another character, a group, or society, or even forces of nature. So character versus character, problem between one character and another. Character versus society is a problem between a character and society, school, the law, a tradition, something like that. And then character versus nature is going to be a problem between a character and some other element of nature, like a blizzard, a hurricane, you know, being stranded in the ocean or something like that. Okay, so let's test your knowledge really quickly. This is a quick activity. This is not the ending activity that usually takes a little bit more time. But what I'm going to have you do here is number on your paper 1 to 5. And I'm just going to give you some examples in sentence form, and I just want you to write down in that 1 to 5 space you just wrote down, if it's an I for an internal conflict or an E for an external conflict. Okay, so number 1, Steve likes Liz. Is that internal or external? Number 2, Liz shouts angrily at Steve. Is that internal or external? Mrs. Carter and Mrs. Broderick get into an argument about which is better, reading or writing. Is that internal or external? And again, remember here that arguments and fighting are not the same thing, and this isn't true, I'm just making it up, but it's kind of fun sometimes when it's people you can actually relate to. But Mrs. Broderick and I don't get into fights, just so you know, or even arguments, really. Okay, number 4, Sarah is getting a new phone for her birthday, and she doesn't know which one to get. Internal or external? Be good too if you can judge on, your ability to use those subtopics too, if you can figure out if it's character versus character, character versus society, that sort of thing. And then finally, Josue gets stuck in a hailstorm without an umbrella or jacket. Is that internal or external? So we'll judge those or grade those tomorrow in class. We'll probably use the whiteboards to do that, and we'll see how you did. Internal versus external. That should have been fairly easy. Okay, so as far as kind of going more in depth on these external conflicts, I wanted to quickly take a look at character versus character and character versus society. So this is mostly seen as a problem between 2 different characters. This is the first one, character versus character. And again, something we really need to remember, it doesn't have to be like a physical battle. It could be, a battle of the minds or the battle of the wills or battle of opinions. It doesn't have to be like a physical fight. When we think about conflict and we think about problems, it doesn't always have to be, where someone else is getting hurt or something. So when you move into character versus society, it can be a problem between a main character and a group of characters, or the society or the law or the school or the traditions of that particular group. But again, same as before, it does not have to be a physical altercation, a physical fight between that main character and whoever else is involved. Okay, so character versus nature is defined as anything that surrounds that character. That can include weather, objects, activities, but it's basically anything outside the character except people. I went really fast on that. Do you need that back up? I don't know if you do. If you do, pause it. That's what the pause button is for. Silly me. All right, so here's our final activity. So what you're going to do is create a 4-column table that you're going to see on the next slide. You're going to write down the examples from the text, and you're going to label them if they're internal or external, and then you're going to give me the more specific kind of conflict: character versus self, character versus character, character versus society, and character versus nature. And then finally, you're going to explain your way of thinking. And don't roll your eyes. There's only 3 examples. I see you. I see you through the computer. I can see you. Don't roll your eyes. This is very quick. All right, here we go. This is what I want you to make it look like. So you've got the quick little example from the text. You're going to make 1 column to tell me if it's internal or external. You're going to make 1 column to tell me what kind of conflict. And then at the end, you're going to explain your thinking. So our first example, we've got to do something. We can't let ourselves be killed. Is that internal or external? You'll write it in the next column. What kind of conflict? Character versus character, character versus society, character versus nature. Which one am I forgetting? Character versus, oh my gosh. Character, what did I say? Character versus character, character versus society, character versus nature, and character. What's the 4th one? Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go back through. Anywho, you know what I'm asking you to do. You've got your notes in front of you. You're not having a total brain fart like I am. Okay, and then finally explain your thinking as to why it is that specific kind of conflict. All right. Go through the other 2 examples, and then you're finished. Don't forget to do the digital section for today, and I will grade your stuff in class tomorrow. Thanks, guys.